So the question is, growth hormone, insulin, how is that used in bodybuilding and sports? How does it all work? Well, this is a complicated answer. First of all, growth hormone causes the uptake of certain amino acids. Insulin causes the uptake of other amino acids. Combined, they produce a synergistic effect of protein synthesis with the uptake of the different amino acids. Also, growth hormone produces a fat burning effect by boosting metabolism, and also it makes you insulin insensitive or insulin resistant. What that means is your body is less sensitive to insulin. Therefore, you're unable to use carbohydrates for fuel, so a lot of the carbohydrates don't get used, and even if you're eating carbohydrates, you don't tend to put on body fat because they're not actually getting processed. This is one way growth hormone actually helps you to lose body fat. A lot of times people see what is called the GH gut, and back when it first happened, bodybuilders and other athletes were having these extended guts from GH, and the theory was that there was visceral fat and the organs were enlarging, and that was creating this distension of the stomach. That's all a bunch of nonsense. What happens is, because you're insulin resistant, you can't digest carbohydrates, and therefore the carbohydrates literally sit in your intestines and produce gas, and that gas is causing the bloating. And so people are basically taking GH, taking in carbohydrates, and producing a huge amount of gas, and that is bloating their intestines. That is the bad news. The good news is if you stop taking GH, that'll stop, and the gas and the bloating will go away, and your stomach will actually shrink back down to normal size. So there's no permanent growth of your intestines or anything like that. Now, that being said, because you're more insulin resistant, you actually, if you're going to use growth hormone, you need to take insulin with it in order to get the anabolic effects. You'll actually need more insulin than your body's able to produce on its own, which is why people take insulin from extraneous sources. Now, that being said, there's all different types of insulins out there. There's regular insulin, there's Humalog, which is fast-acting insulin, there's Lantus, which is long-acting insulin that lasts over 24 hours. There's many different types of insulins, and they all work differently. It's very important, if somebody's going to mess around with insulin, to understand how it works. I think the dangers are exaggerated. There is a danger that you could take too much insulin and go into hypoglycemic shock and potentially go into a coma and potentially die. That's true, but you'd really have to mess up on your insulin, which I guess is possible. Actually, I've seen a couple people do it. The rule is, for every 10 units of insulin, you need a minimum of 100 grams of carbohydrates. And I say a minimum of 100 grams. Some people are more insulin sensitive. If you've never used insulin before, it could be 5 units to 100 grams of carbohydrates. So if you're going to use insulin, you need to start with a very small dose and figure out how much carbs you need to keep from getting hypoglycemic. Now, again, there's regular insulin, which kicks in within 2 hours and lasts up to 8 hours. There's longer acting insulins that last up to 24 hours, and there's a Humalog, which is short acting insulin that hits you pretty much immediately, lasts only 2 to 3 hours. The danger of going hypo on, I would believe, Humalog are probably greatest, because it kicks in right away, and immediately you better be taking carbohydrates in immediately with that insulin, and you need to take enough carbohydrates to balance out the insulin. Now, the other thing is timing an insulin of GH. If you're using GH to burn fat, and you want the fat burning effect, you cannot take it with insulin present in the system, because insulin will block the fat burning effect of growth hormone. So, that being said, insulin, actually growth hormone, needs to be taken on an empty stomach when there's no extra insulin circulating in your system. The ideal time to take it, in my opinion, would be first thing in the morning, because there's nothing in your stomach and you haven't eaten, and you take it in the morning and then do not eat anything for at least an hour to 2 hours after you've taken it. Another thing people do is they'll get up in the middle of the night and take their GH and then go back to sleep. You could do that as well. But the bottom line is you cannot eat if you want to burn fat with GH immediately after you take it, and you definitely don't want to take insulin. Now, when is the best time to take insulin? It depends on the type of insulin you're taking. If you're taking the fast-acting insulin, ideally times would be to take it when you want your body to store as much carbohydrates as possible. Post-workout would be an ideal time. Right then you have what's called the window of opportunity. Your muscles are starving for nutrients and fuel, and insulin will cause the uptake of not only carbohydrates but also amino acids and fats as well. So if you were to work out, take fast-acting insulin immediately and then eat carbs and protein, a lot of those carbs and protein will get stored into the muscle immediately. Now, another thing people do is they'll take insulin before a training session and then drink a drink during the training session consisting of carbohydrates and proteins, at quick digesting carbohydrates like dextrose and maltodextrin, which is basically carbolin, and a hydrolyzed whey or branched chain amino acids, glutamine, and you would drink this during your workout. If you do this, what will happen is during the workout, you're training, you're pumping blood into the muscle, and those carbs and electrolytes and everything will be absorbed into the muscle immediately, because insulin will cause them to immediately absorb right into the muscle, and you'll get the most amazing pump you've ever seen. Now, of course, this is a very risky thing to do because you again have the risk of hypoglycemic shock. If you take this insulin and you go work out and you don't take in enough carbohydrates and proteins during the workout, you can go into hypoglycemic shock in the middle of your workout. So you really better know how your body responds to insulin and how much to take and when to take it before you start doing this. There are other things like metformin, which cause your pancreas to produce more insulin. Diabetics use this, and some athletes use this as well. I'm not a fan of these things, and I'll tell you why. They're very unpredictable. You don't really know how many units of insulin your pancreas is going to produce using metformin. I actually tried it one time when I was younger, and I didn't know, and I got into a hypoglycemic reaction where when you get hypoglycemic, you're sweating, you're shaking, you feel lightheaded, and basically I just started pounding orange juice and eating everything in sight for the next 2 hours. And the problem with that stuff is you don't know how your body's going to react to it. It's hard to judge. So I'm not really a fan of those types of things. Now, when it comes to growth hormone, definitely the combination of growth hormone and insulin is extremely powerful. Athletes have taken their bodies to a new level, and the reality is the size and conditioning that you see in today's athletes could not be achieved without insulin and growth hormone. That's just a reality. The dosages that somebody takes, now that's questionable. I've seen moderate, actually very impressive gains taking moderate doses of GH and very moderate doses of insulin. It doesn't take a whole lot. But there are some people of the opinion that more is better, so they'll take even more GH and more insulin. Of course, that will work if you can eat more food. But realize, for every 10 units of insulin, you need to take a minimum of 100 to 200 grams of carbohydrates. And you also need to take in your proteins as well. You will need to take in fats, but insulin will also put fat on you. So if you take in too much fat while you're on insulin, it will not only build muscle, but it'll build your fat too. There's another insulin called Lantus. It's a long-acting insulin. And another effect insulin has is it causes your body to produce IGF-1. Lantus actually causes you to produce 5 to 6 times more IGF-1 than growth hormone or regular insulin. So it's a very powerful compound. I've known people to take up to 100 units of Lantus in a day and get amazing results in size in very short periods of time. So you'll just literally blow up. However, the Lantus will also store a great amount of fat on you, and you will find that that fat is hard to get off. So you will get bigger, but it will also make you fat. That's just from personal experience. So there's a reward and then there's a consequence to both. Right now, I've used GH and insulin on and off for over 30 years. I've decided at this point I'm not using either one of them right now because I'm doing fine, letting my body produce naturally on its own, and I'm not getting ready for a competition. The only instance where I suggest people use GH and insulin is obviously you're going to compete, or if you just have some real goals to get super huge fast and you want to stay lean. If this is the case, then obviously GH and insulin are going to be involved. The downside of it, of course, they all cost a lot of money. GH is not cheap. Now, there's a bogus GH out there that people are getting in from China. This stuff is completely fake. God knows what's in it, but it's not real growth hormone, and it will have pretty much zero effect on you. So if you're going to get real pharmaceutical grade GH, it's going to cost you some money, and your GH bill can get pretty hefty pretty quick. The other thing with GH is it's not a quick result. The fat burning that you'll see happens over a long period of time. So if you're going to take it, you have to plan on staying on it for several months, even years, to really see a profound difference. So again, there's a cost involved in that. But reality is the top pros in the world are using these things. They're using them in healthy doses, or I should say pretty large doses actually, and they do work. They're definitely effective.